here maybe a little earlier than you had planned and to find your way down here to the Lilac Room. It's great to have you all here. My name is Greg Handel. I'm Vice President for Talented, which is the umbrella organization for all of the Chamber's education and workforce activities. We're here today to talk about dual enrollment. But before we do that, I want to set a little bit of context for why is the Chamber concerned about this? Why is this on the agenda at the Mackinac Policy Conference? First of all, it's that education attainment, post-secondary attainment, is a crucial component of regional economic prosperity and economic growth. And so apologies to those of you who have heard the statistic before, but I'm going to repeat it until everybody in Michigan can recite it in their sleep. But that if you go back as recently as the year 2000, Michigan was 16th in per capita income, even though we were about 37th or 38th in the percentage of adults with some kind of a post-secondary education. So as recently as 25 years ago, there was a path to prosperity, even if you weren't necessarily a highly educated region or state or even an individual. Flash forward to today, Michigan is 39th in per capita income, largely because we're still 37th, 38th in per capita income. Except today, we don't have those outliers where there are low education attainment states or regions, but high per capita income. Your per capita income is now driven by your education attainment. And in compared to high-performing states and regions, Michigan is really challenged. We've documented a lot of this data, where Michigan stands, where the Detroit region stands in our State of Education and Talent Report. It's in the back table. Megan's holding that up. I thought you were about to hold that up, Megan. I just saw you reaching. So in response to this challenge, almost a decade ago, we began to convene stakeholders from community colleges in the region, universities, K-12 districts, philanthropy, business, community partners, government, to put together strategies to increase the flow of students into post-secondary education and then also successfully through. We came up with a number of strategies, a strategic plan to get us there. And about 2 years ago, that work was really accelerated by huge investments by the Ralph C. Wilson Jr. Foundation, the Ballmer Group, additional funding from the Rocket Community Foundation, specifically to focus on our community colleges in Southeast Michigan and to help them figure out how to increase access from K-12 into their institutions, but also to help students complete once they had arrived. One data point kind of illustrates the challenge that our institutions were facing. If you go back just to 2015, 67% of Michigan high school graduates were enrolling directly in some kind of higher ed after high school. Today, that number's down to 53%. So in a pretty short period of time, from 67% to 53%. And a lot of that enrollment difference is driven by community colleges. The enrollment in 4 years has declined a little bit, but not nearly as much as community college, which tends to be driven, it's very counter-cyclical. So we've had good paying jobs available. A lot of students leave high school, think, I can make a good living without going to college. That's what they do. But that's the challenge that our community colleges were facing. As a group, with this investment by our funders, they began to look at strategies that could really help. One of the things they looked around the country and noticed was the effectiveness of early credit programs, dual enrollment around the country, in helping more students matriculate into college and actually then succeeding if they had been a dual enrolled student. Unfortunately, that's a strategy that is really underutilized in Michigan. And so as a group, to try and really determine what can we do to take this to the next level, the Michigan Community College Association, who's one of the sponsors of this session, along with Michigan College Access Network, commissioned a report. They convened a working group, commissioned a report with a number of recommendations on how we could take this work to scale and get Michigan to look a lot more like other states that have successfully utilized dual enrollment. So what I want to do is introduce our panel. It's going to help us really kind of delve into this in more detail. So we have Ryan Fewens-Bliss, the Executive Director of the Michigan College Access Network, Dr. Sharon Hopkins, Assistant Director of Dual Enrollment and Advanced Placement for the Detroit Public Schools Community District, and Russ Cavalluna, the President of Henry Ford for another month, Henry Ford College, before he becomes the President at Western Michigan University. So welcome, and welcome everybody. So Ryan, I want to start with you and just talk a little about why dual enrollment, why does it work, and what evidence do we have that can be effective in Michigan?
Well, first I want to say you told me to bring the heat for this session, and I misunderstood you. So if I'm fanning myself,
I didn't tell you to
just
run up the
forgive
hill.
me. I didn't even run. I'm from northern Michigan, so we have internal furnaces, and we can't turn them off. It's so great to be here and talk about this, though. In short, it's because dual enrollment works. The data around dual enrollment is outstanding. It's better than most interventions that we can list. You look at course passage rates, it's in the 90 percentile. It's just fantastic. And it saves us money as a state if students are taking college courses when they are cheaper, and we'll talk about funding later. And it really helps propel students into college. So imagine being a student who has been sort of feeling like, I'm not college material, I don't know if I'm gonna go to college, I don't know if I can do this. And suddenly you're in a college course in high school, you're passing it, it's fun, you're with other students, you get a taste of college, you're in a lab, and suddenly it's like, I could do this. Not only can I do this, look, I did it. And then in Michigan, if you're gonna go to one of our wonderful community colleges or tribal colleges, not only can you get credit and get accepted, you can get it paid for if you're in district completely. And if you're not in district, mostly paid for. So it's just a good win-win-win. And as we look in education for strategies where we're not just throwing money at things that aren't working, dual enrollment has numbers that just beat it all. It's fantastic.
So it sort of demystifies it for students that might otherwise view that as a real obstacle, a chance to kind of get a soft entry.
Yeah, and gives them the confidence. Not only am I college material, I am college material, right? I did it. I have college credits now.
Sure. So Russ, nationally, about 18% of community college students are there through a dual enrollment. In Michigan, that's like 14%. Can you talk about what leads other states to have kind of better numbers than Michigan, and what do you think we can do about it?
Well, the statutory framework that sets up that 14% of Michiganders who find themselves in dual enrollment courses doesn't produce the kind of information and motivation for either students or administrators that exists in other states. So I'll give you an example. If anyone in this room has a kid that's in high school and thinks they might want to take advantage of the local community college, the state law kind of gently suggests that the school district, the ABC High School and ABC Community College get along, but they don't push it. And so if your child is thinking about possibly getting a math or a science course knocked off at Wayne County Community College District or Jackson College, the parent has to go out there and figure that out. And if Jackson, whatever high school the student is in Jackson and Jackson College haven't already made up an agreement, then the student is kind of out of luck. Other states do more to say, this is what should happen. And I'm lucky to be in Dearborn because it just so happens that communication and existence, or collaboration has been in existence for about 15 years, whereas the superintendent of the local school district, the president of the local community college, have set up a really robust connection such that student there not only doesn't have to go figure that out, or their parents don't have to figure it out. In fact, the students sitting next to them in the lunchroom in the high school are like, hey, you're going to go to Henry Ford, aren't you? Because that's what my brother did, and he got 10 courses knocked off for free. So that's the difference in Michigan. I'm sure we're going to talk about it, but that's where we think we can get together as a coalition, industry, nonprofits, public schools, community colleges. We can get together and kind of redo and make better our statutory framework.
Thanks, Russ. So Sharon, can you talk a little bit about your push to expand dual enrollment at DPSCD and why it's a priority to you?
Absolutely. First, I want to thank the Detroit Regional Chamber for the invite to be able to come here and talk about the impactful work that DPSCD is doing with dual enrollment. We've undertaken the expansion of dual enrollment because what we see is that by the 11th and 12th grades, students become disengaged with school. They've completed many of the graduation requirements. They feel like their coursework is not connected to their passions. So we've decided to reimagine the high school experience to be one that empowers and excites students by connecting their coursework to career-connected learning and dual enrollment pathways of their interest. And so since 2017, under the leadership of Dr. Vitti and our newly elected board, we've really aggressively and intentionally expanded dual enrollment. We've seen a 20% increase in students interested in dual enrollment since 2022. This year, we've had nearly 2,000 students take courses, more than 2,800 courses, and we've had a 96% pass rate. So we know it's effective. We have a goal in our strategic plan of 80% of our high school students taking at least one college and career readiness course. And in our comprehensive high school redesign plan, we're looking for a significant number of our 11th and 12th grade students to take classes on a college campus, mostly community colleges, where they can earn industry certificates, where they can earn associate degrees, so that they can pursue their passions, because we just know that our dual enrollment students have higher attendance, they are more engaged, they have increased confidence. We're looking to get them onto those community college campuses to demystify the college going process, especially for our first gen, our historically marginalized students. Additionally, there's a significant opportunity to prepare our students for the high wage, high demand careers of the future, especially those technical careers where we just don't have the human capital at the K-12 system to prepare students for those. We have students interested in engineering, healthcare, allied healthcare, computer systems networking, business administration, education. Those are the things they tell us they're interested in. And so if we could leverage the resources, the infrastructure, the expertise of our post-secondary institutions to give the students those skills that'll equip them for the future, then they'll be better positioned to revitalize our city and our state. And so it's just a win-win for the K-12 system, for the higher ed institutions, and the business community if we're graduating students who are prepared to enter that workforce for us.
I love the fact that you're thinking big, really big. So Ryan, back to you. So Michigan high schools are required to make dual enrollment available to students, but Michigan, only about 7% of Michigan high school seniors have completed dual enrollment by the time they graduate. Can you talk a little bit about the policies that need to change in order for those numbers to come up? Not just kind of what the school does to execute, but what policies at a statewide level do we need to rethink in order to expand dual enrollment and take it to scale?
Yeah, so there's some eligibility challenges that are in the policy right now, where students are mostly sent to dual enrollment or recommended to dual enrollment if they have certain test scores. And we know testing is a regressive policy. We know Black and brown students do worse on testing, even though that does not mean anything about their intellect. And so using those as the only measure is inequitable and misses a bunch of students who could really be successful at courses that are their calling. And so one of the big pieces that we're asking for in our recommendations, and these were all done with a committee of people, multiple sectors coming together, is to broaden the eligibility to allow for things like principal or student, or excuse me, teacher or counselor recommendations, GPA, other indicators that would show a student would be successful in that class, as a way of, again, finding the right fit, the right place for these students to go for their educational journey. There's also some disincentives for financing, which I know we'll talk about later, but one of the policy changes needs to be changing the financial method of paying for this out of the foundation allowance from the K-12 school. While each school is required to offer this, it's like, at most schools, like a whisper in the hallways.
Yeah.
You know, here's a secret, go and say these words at the counselor's office and we'll get you into a dual enrollment course, because every time a student dual enrolls, the district loses money. And we know our districts don't have extra money to lose money. And so there's a model that we're pitching that would change that so that we're not penalizing schools that are doing a lot of dual enrollment, and we're incentivizing schools that aren't doing dual enrollment.
Yeah, spoiler alert, this is probably the number one policy recommendation that has to be tackled here. So Russ, in our state, about 70% of dual enrolled students are enrolled through a community college. And Henry Ford, you mentioned, has a unique relationship because the district for the college is the same as the Dearborn Public Schools district. So you have a pretty unique relationship, which I think allows you to have a probably more seamlessly integrated dual enrollment program. But talk about the success of that program and why it's worked and what you think it offers students.
Yeah, I would do a context set here for those that are new to the dual enrollment discussion. If you can imagine a high school in Michigan, there's a segment of the folks there that have decided that they're going to college, or their parents are going to pay for college, or they're going to take AP courses. And the work that Michigan and the Chamber have done have seen that's not what we're talking about really right here. Those folks are going to probably go to a four-year institution right out of college. Our problem there is to get them seated in jobs in Michigan to keep them. There's an entire different population that dual enrollment is much better at getting, and this is a really high return on investment population. Just for numbers, if you can get a student into a community college in Michigan and then get them through to graduation, number one, that does that kind of economic and social development that you let us off with, Greg. But 90% of those students will stay in the area that they matriculated from and immediately start giving back returns, either socially or economically or both. And I mean, per capita wages is what you talked about, but infant mortalities,
Yeah.
crime rates, mental health, all those track with that. And the group of folks that we can get into community colleges and get them 90% to stay are often the students in that fictional high school I just mentioned who are on the edge. They are not the ones who are taking AP courses and who are not having parents say that they will go to college and who have wondered about how they're going to pay for college. This is what Ryan started to talk about. This is the reason why this is such a great program, because the families don't lose any money sending their child to the local community college or university. In other words, the money flows from Lansing into the local school district, and then the local school district makes a contract or an agreement with the local higher ed provider, and that money flows for the student to us in higher education. So it is a win-win. But what happens, and what Ryan has started to talk about, is that if there is not a natural incentive for that superintendent, and often it is the superintendent and the CEO of that local higher education institution, if there's not an incentive for them to get together and make a deal, then the student is either ignorant of it or has to fight their own path for it. And we know both of those don't happen. And the proof of that is in the opposite, where I live and work, superintendents and presidents long before me made this so well known that we've now changed the culture for that segment of students I talked about. And I kind of alluded to it a minute ago. There is a college-going culture because generation after generation has seen that they will get free college while they're in high school. And if you don't do that, well, then shame on you. But right now, the opposite is happening in some places where if you're thought of trying to go to a community college, like Ryan said, or a local university through dual enrollment, then you got to kind of whisper a secret password, and it's almost, there is not an incentive. And so what we think is to give the money some carrot behind it, which says, superintendent, president, you need to do a better job forging that path. And we know it works because it works. And Henry Ford College and Dearborn are not the only places that exist. But I will tell you, right now, 20% of our students, you said that, you know, a lot lower percentage of students in Michigan are going to enrollment. 20% of the 14,000 students at Henry Ford College are high school students. And so there's an economic reality for my bottom line there also.
It's great. Sharon, so, you know, ideally, dual enrollment offers a free pathway to college credits for students. There's one important caveat, though, in our current system, and that is if the student fails the course, their family has to repay the cost of the course to the district, or can be required to, which can be a huge disincentive to even like taking that chance. Can you talk a little bit about the recommendations in the task force's report and how that would address that and other costs of attendance?
Absolutely. The policy recommendation is that that barrier be removed. DPSCD has recognized that that is a barrier for our students, especially students whose family members have not had to navigate a college-going experience. And so we've worked with, especially our Wayne County Community College district partner, to not charge students when they have to withdraw from a course for various reasons. One of the recommendations in the policy is also that we strengthen those academic advising supports, the wraparound supports that high school students need to be able to successfully navigate college, so that we can have some early intervention protocols so that we can catch students before they have to withdraw. And so that's very important. Also, the policy talks about the additional costs that are not covered under the Michigan Post-Secondary Enrollment Options Act, like technology fees. So if students are really interested in those cybersecurity, computer networking courses, they may be able to use a laptop while they're at school, but not necessarily at home or when they're on the college campus. Those costs are not covered. Additionally, if we want our students to be able to navigate those college campuses, to become familiar with them so that they know it's accessible and attainable, what resources are available to them, we have to get them there. Transportation costs are not covered under the Michigan Post-Secondary Enrollment Option Act. We want the experience of dual enrollment to feel different. While having professors come to the high school campus does give them access, it doesn't give them that full experience to know that they can go, they can persist. And so that's why we're trying to invest significant resources into our 11th and 12th graders going to college campuses. That money is not recouped. And so the policy recommendation to be able to add additional funds to cover all the direct costs related to dual enrollment would significantly incentivize dual enrollment, especially for us as the largest district in the state. We're spending tons of money from our school balance that could be diverted to other places to get students ready for dual enrollment experiences. And so we're just looking at the holistic picture for how we can prepare our students to matriculate through college, and that's a barrier for our students not having that funding there.
Thanks, Sharon. And I've got one more round of questions for the panelists, but then I see folks in the audience who I know are pretty knowledgeable on this subject and also not very shy. So stand by. We'll have mics in the audience after this round of questions, and we'd love to open it up and get more thoughts and questions for the panel on dual enrollment. But Ryan, so let's get to the kind of the meat of the policy recommendations. How would these recommendations change kind of the cost equations and incentives for school districts to really offer dual enrollment at scale?
Well,
And the infrastructure by which that could happen through.
yeah, if it's okay with you, I'm a vegetarian, so I'm going to get to the broccoli of it.
Oh,
So you'll get it later. It's okay.
that was really bad.
So the way that the financing works right now, as I mentioned, is that every school gets their per student foundation allowance, and that doesn't change for dual enrollment. But when a student then goes to enroll at Russ's shop or Dan's shop, part of that foundation allowance the K-12 needs to send over to the higher ed to offset those costs. So again, if you're a K-12 who feels like I need more money, I don't have air conditioning in my building, I don't have the things that are really important, you're not really incentivized to be like, hey, kids, everybody go dual enroll, because it could be very costly for you. So the recommendations are that we shift how we finance that out of the foundation allowance and create an appropriation that is just for dual enrollment. There already is one for dual enrollment for private schools. So we're just looking for parity with what we're already doing with private schools, really to match that. Move the money from MDE over to MyLeap, and we want to do that because that's where the system with the private schools already sits. They know it, they've got payment schedules, they've got all that worked out with the institutions. That money could come out of school aid fund, it could come out of general fund, it could go in the post-secondary student fund. There's lots of options legislators have on where to put it and where to pull it from. But if we have a standalone amount of money, it will lose the disincentive. We will stop penalizing schools for doing good, and we will start incentivizing the schools that aren't doing so well with dual enrollment to do it more. So that's a big shift, but it's about $60-ish million, which isn't a ton. And hopefully it would grow over time, but that would really free up school districts. And what that would do for the school district is instantly every dollar they were paying out of the foundation allowance to a higher ed for dual enrollment, they get to keep for their things that they need, security and textbooks and all of the things. So it really is a win for the K-12, they get to keep more of their money, a win for the student, they get credit that will save them time and money in college, and a win for the higher ed, more enrollment and more students coming in their door. Rarely do we see policy that's win-win-win.
And I'd add for the state, that investment in credits as a high school student can be offset by faster time to completion once that student is out of high school. They need to draw on Michigan Achievement Scholarship, Community College Guarantee at a lower rate because they're entering
Right, as
college.
the tuition gets more expensive, they're taking it at a lower rate that the state is paying for, so the state saves money in the long run.
Great. So Russ, last question for you. You served on the Governor's Council for the Grow Michigan Together Council. What were the council's recommendation on dual enrollment, and how are they connected to the policy recommendations?
Yeah, the recommendations are to do a lot of the money work that Ryan just summarized to make this far more understood and accepted by communities, part of which would be either ameliorated or completely handled by the money problem that Ryan just summarized. And then what we envisioned was making it clear for folks in high school that they had a path, not just from their high school to the local community college, but to the university, because that was what the kind of biggest golden ring we could accomplish as a state would be to get more people into college, through college, and then in jobs in Michigan. And I'll say, kind of harking back to my previous statement, the future of population or prosperity or civil government, all this, at least in higher education, hinges on whether we're going to be able to talk to the generations. Like 3 generations ago, there were people who just knew that they were not for college. Either the society told them they weren't for college, or their parents did, or all that. And by the way, a lot of the negative reinforcement that generation faced is still visited upon the current generation. And we still sit here and talk about how you need a college degree and how your life will be better. But the reality is the data you started out with here shows we're not really making much of a dent. Dual enrollment is one exception to that. If you get an 11th grader to take a math, science, or English course, or by the way, if they're really not into liberal arts, if they take a welding class or a respiratory therapist class, and a lot of the local districts can't afford that, but the community colleges can. If you get them to do that, what Ryan is telling you, I am telling you, I see these students. Their entire worldview changes, and we just never even tried that 2 generations ago. There were kids for college and kids not for college. Well, that dichotomy still exists in a lot of our high schools. This is one of the antidotes to that. And for $65 million, which is really the big lift in this policy proposal, it's an extraordinary return on investment because these students, I see them on my campus, I see them on my colleagues' campuses. I'm telling you, there are students who otherwise will not get into the college pipeline, and everybody loses as a result of that. Now, if there's some of them who don't deserve to be there and they don't do well, okay, we'll have to deal with that. And there may be some that's the whole community college method there, is to give access because we know that there's really valuable human capital that otherwise would be left on the wayside. Dual enrollment is the best result. And I'm telling you, if you ask people who have done this work, there's a lot of them in this room, it's the marginalized students in high school that get a shot through dual enrollment that is the best return. And that's the big message we came out of, which got unanimous approval by the Growing Michigan Together Council, which was bipartisan, industry, and local government.
Great, thanks, Russ. So Sharon, last question, and then we'll go to the audience. But program completion, tracking student outcomes is a big part of your strategy. Can you talk about how that kind of activity is addressed in the recommendations?
Absolutely. To Russ's point, we've surveyed our students. We know that those 11th and 12th graders that become disengaged, they're not disengaged across all subjects. We have students that are very interested in computers, and while a liberal arts education may have them snoozing on their desk, we get them in a cybersecurity program for dual enrollment, and they're just taking off. We get them in a program for dual enrollment that's specifically focused on pre-engineering, or if they're interested in allied health careers, they do just very well in those. And so what we've decided to do is make sure that we're intentional about our dual enrollment programming so that students are not just offered, intro to psychology or a basic, liberal arts education, but we're getting them directly into pathways aligned to high wage, high demand careers beginning in the 11th grade. So we have students that have graduated with their FAA drone pilot's license. We have students that are graduating with community development and leadership certificates, basic engineering certificates. So we want them to walk away with something tangible. And in order to do that, our data systems have to be strong, and we have to talk better to our higher ed partners in terms of data sharing and who's passing, how many courses do they need in the sequence to complete that certificate. So what we're working on now with our partners is being able to upload that information, those course sequences, into our student information systems so that high school counselors can track when they're advising students. Hey, I know you want to go for that 20 credit engineering certificate. I see you need these 3 classes. Let me make sure that gets on your schedule and that we get you there that's going to be the key to having our students enter the workforce should they decide to having those credentials to be able to have a real impact on our community, but just the state at large.
Great. I lied. I had one more question hiding at the bottom of my stack of papers here. But Ryan, can you just kind of, to wrap this up, talk about where do things stand right now with the policy recommendations, what's next, and what can folks in the audience do to support the recommendations?
Yeah, and I want to add, we've talked a lot about community college up here, and community college is a natural connection, but I do want to call out our friends in four-year, both public and private. They're doing some amazing things with dual enrollment. This policy, we believe, would benefit them as well. On my board, it sits alongside Greg, is Dr. Sobe, the president of Lawrence Tech. They're doing amazing things with students in dual enrollment on the private side. So there's all sorts of opportunities for our four-year friends as well. So where the recommendations stand, we are working with our legislative leaders to find sponsors for potential bills. Because there's so many recommendations, there's a lot of bills that we could have here, and we're hoping that it will be bipartisan. Really, it's nonpartisan if you want to think about it like that. But we'll be looking for leaders in both chambers and leaders from both parties to pick those things up. This money that we're looking for in the recommendation is not in the governor's recommended budget. It's not in the Senate's budget. We're hoping that at least a placeholder, if the whole thing was in the House budget, that would be great, but we're hoping a placeholder will be there so we can continue to negotiate with them. So as you talk to your elected officials, please share your interest in this topic. Please talk to your House members and House leadership especially, and hope that it fits into their budget this year. Because we can do great things and we don't have to wait. We can get it in the money piece in the budget, and then we can deal with the policy afterwards. And there's just wins for everyone here. There's wins for Democrats, there's wins for Republicans, House members, Senate members, and certainly wins for the governor as well.
And that's why there's a coalition, including the chamber, that already support this. So, all right, with that, I know you all found your way here early because you're passionate about this subject. So I'm going to give you guys a chance to weigh in, ask questions. We got mics on either side in the back of the room.
We're looking for a Jerry Springer moment.
Yeah. Well, maybe not that.
Thanks, Don. Kick us off. I always like to kick off, right? Yeah, I'm shy. But thank you guys. I really am encouraged by everything you're saying. One of the things as a parent that was pushed on me, and Ms. Hopkins, maybe you can speak to this, was AP courses. Nope, you can't go to the dual enrollment, you have to do AP. And I think parents don't understand the difference. And I guess what I'd like to hear is your thoughts on that, and then how does that play into the case for dual enrollment?
Excellent question. So I oversee both AP and dual enrollment for our district. We have slightly larger enrollment in dual enrollment. What we see is that there are some students that are just high achievers, especially at our examination high schools, that can do well in both. But we see, to Russ's point, those students who are not necessarily being pushed to a college trajectory, they're able to earn college credit through the dual enrollment courses at a much higher rate than AP. Because AP requires you to pass that end of course examination with a 3, 4, or 5, depending on the post-secondary institution you decide to go to. You might only get the 4 or 5, and many of our students might not score that high. Where dual enrollment, if you do everything that you're supposed to do, that's guaranteed credit, and so we see much greater success for our students who are first-gen, second language learners, do much better with the dual enrollment courses. So as a parent, my daughter just graduated college last week. She was able to transfer in 15 credits from dual enrollment and only 3 from AP. So I always give that personal anecdote as a reason why school districts should be pushing dual enrollment, because it's just a greater return on investment when we look at, the overall landscape of college credit.
AP works for students that it works for, and it's a great option, and it should be one more option. There's also some money in the budget to pay for low-income students to take AP courses. But just to give you my story, I graduated 17th in my class out of 252, so not too shabby. My calculus teacher, my AP Calc teacher, told me, you shouldn't take the test, Ryan. which, you know, made me want to take it even more. And out of spite, I took the test and I got the 3, which I'm still very proud of, and took those credits to Central Michigan University. Didn't have to take a math course for the rest of my time. But that's some of the messaging and some of the beliefs that folks have, and not just teachers. Teachers are great, and I really support them, but community members and administrators and other folks. Some of this old stuff that Russ was talking about earlier sticks around, and kids get bad advice. Dual enrollment is not one of those places where we can do that, which is great.
Great. Question up here. Raise your hand high so they can see you in the back.
Hi, this is so interesting. I'm Perry with Student Advocacy Center. My question is about students with disabilities and how, you know, the level of support for kids with disabilities in post-secondary often looks different significantly than it does in high school. And just curious kind of how you're pushing that support in, or if that's any of the policy recommendations to address those potential barriers. Thanks.
Absolutely. I can speak to what we do in Detroit. We know that every student should have the opportunity because, again, we don't require minimum test scores or anything like that. We're actually actively pushing dual enrollment for all students. We have that goal of 80% by the time they graduate high school. And so what we're pushing for our counselors to do is strategically advise students on the courses that they'd be likely to pass, given their interests. So interest helps. But also, I definitely think that that's a place where there's more support needed in terms of the community college or the four-year institution and the high school better working to give those wraparound supports for students. Just some early intervention models. That's why DPSCD is pushing for our high school redesign plan, where we will have dedicated staff to advise those 11th and 12th graders who are taking those dual enrollment classes. And we're also working with our post-secondary partners to identify a person that can support them with the disability services and all of that. And so the policy recommendation does ask for strengthened academic advising and intervention supports, and DPSCD has long championed that. We're working internally, but we also could do more as we plan to expand dual enrollment.
Any other questions? Here.
All right, I'm gonna hang out right over here.
Thank you very much.
And in front of him after that.
Good.
Okay.
Ryan, Russ, Doug, great to have you on the panel. I've got a question. Kevin starts with Talent first. I've got a question actually for Sharon, kind of building on the earlier question. As far as incentives for district leaders to really drive on dual enrollment, I've got 2 college students. They've each almost completed a full year with dual enrollment credits. They've also taken AP courses and only have earned, I think, 3 credits out of that entire process. So we can talk about AP as a racket later on. But specifically on dual enrollment, do you have specific ideas on how to incentivize districts? Because you've got AP courses, you've got AP teachers. You have the prestige of schools announcing at the end of the calendar year, the school year, how many students earn AP courses. So it gives this kind of false narrative. And also there's a financial impact because you've got staff who are running those classes. Any way that through incentives you could write those into the proposal, because I completely agree that dual enrollment is a terrific strategy for Michigan, but you could do that but not get the outcomes that you want because the districts don't really adjust and really push in dual enrollment, because I think it is really a great advantage for students over AP. Thank you.
I'll say 2 things. The policy right now already recommends that the funding not come out of our foundational balance. So that's going to be key for incentivizing. I do want to credit the leadership of Dr. Vitti and our CAO, Mrs. Campbell-Williams, because despite the financial hit that DPSCD takes for this, they believe just that much in dual enrollment and that it is essential to revitalizing our city. So we've invested significant dollars in dual enrollment, despite the fact that the money is being diverted from other places. we're very supportive of the policy because we believe that it'll allow us to expand even further. One of the unique ways that we've been kind of dealing with the AP dual enrollment, unspoken competition, I would say, is that a lot of our teachers who are veterans and efficacious, they are dual enrollment instructors. So they work with our college and community college partners to become adjuncts. And so they're able to offer that experience to our students because that allows them the professional challenge while still be able to understand just a 16-year-old is different from a 25-year-old. So that's one of the ways we've been able to do that, but also there's power in data. Our numbers for AP passing are much lower than they are for dual enrollment. We sit at 96% of dual enrollment courses passed this year. Flip that a little bit, for AP. And so I think once we leverage the data to realize how significant dual enrollment can be, and also it's about what you get on the end, which is why we're really pushing for those credentials, micro-credentials, certificates, and associate degrees that students can earn, because that's something that they can walk away tangibly for the Michigan Transfer Agreement if they want to go to a four-year institution or if they want to immediately enter the workforce. So we have to think about our long-term goals for our students as one of the ways that we're dealing with that as well.
We're also still struggling with a teacher shortage, and so this can be one way that we help solve that problem. If we can get 30 students in their 7th hour to dual enroll at the local college, that's a class that doesn't have to be covered perhaps by a teacher. Obviously, we don't want teachers out of jobs, and that's not what the policy is looking to do, but could it provide a little depressurization for the districts who are striving to find staff? And if you look at the colleges, they're just not kicking out the teacher graduates anymore. It's scary for our future.
Yeah, over here.
Hello, my name is Lawrence Hood. I'm with Detroit Academy of Arts and Sciences. But I think there's a theme, everyone's talking about personal experiences with their own children. So I'll share mine, and just wondering, probably more for Russ. The question is, I have 2 daughters who graduated with over 40 credits, dual enrollment credits. However, they go to the 4-year institution and they don't honor those credits. And so I have children that are going, I'm not going to say every 4 year, but you all know the ones that don't, unfortunately. And so what are we doing about that to make sure that all community colleges and all 4-year institutions are actually honoring the transfer agreement?
Lawrence, have you heard any of my public statements on this topic?
I have not.
You're raising 2 daughters, I think you said, so you're spending time with them, not listening to my public comments, which is a better use of your time. I've made some pretty strong statements on this. I'll tell you what I believe in my own personal opinion, and then I'll tell you what I think could be the future. But I will acknowledge to you what I'm going to say is open to a lot of strong feelings in higher education, including legal opinions. So here's what I believe, and what we've been able to achieve at Henry Ford College. If you get a credit in a course that is generally the same course here at HFC and across the street at University of Michigan Dearborn, which is where we started this, then we didn't want to have your 2 daughters have to litigate that between the 2 institutions, because no one wins. Everyone's frustrated. It feels like we don't get along. And so what I've strongly advocated for was that through an incentive process, either from funding from the state or from accrediting agencies — by the way, we're from the same accrediting agency that gives us rights to federal funds — one of those entities say to institutions, hey, you're going to have to get along better so that we don't have the 2 daughters dynamic that you've experienced. And can we do that while still honoring the autonomy of the 2 institutions? And that was actually a pretty strong point of discussion at this island a year ago. And that's where I will tell you there's a lot of strong differing views on this. I'll tell you my strong view, but I want you to know there are intelligent people who think differently than me. I just think that the first 2 years of public college, the basic liberal arts, math, science, English, and that's what we teach in the first 2 years, unless there's some compelling reason why 2 publicly funded higher education institutions in Michigan call English in your first year different than what you call English in your first year somewhere else, I think we should make it so that a student wherever they go, that should be transferable. And I think the way to do that is to do it in a block credit analysis, whereby if you get 30 credits from your local community college, that community college has deals with the local universities where those 30 credits travel with the student irrespective of that coursework. We're not there yet. The Growing Michigan Together Council, which Greg kind of referenced, recommended that. And that's what I think we should do. However, there are some that view that kind of infringes on a university's or community college's autonomy. But I think that's an incentive for us to just get together more quickly, because we're not talking about 400 level courses. Okay, I have a grad degree. We're not talking about a grad degree course where that diploma and the name of that diploma has far more intricacy in that course versus the 100 level math and science course. I've tried not to get anybody in trouble by my comments, including myself, but I hope you can sense that I think that students like yours are in a place that they shouldn't have to be, and I think we can change that with incentives.
I think I want to go a step further here. I've got 2 board members in the room, so we'll see if I'm still employed at the end of this. We should stop sending students to these 4-year institutions that won't take the credits. I know students want to go to some of them because of prestige, and I understand that. That's real. But until we show them the economic disadvantage of this, because they are constitutionally autonomous, they need to constitutionally, autonomously make better decisions about what credits they take. And so that means if they're going to turn away a student who is coming, who has proven they can do college work, who is often coming with a community college guarantee or the Michigan Achievement Scholarship, is often coming from a community college with an associate's degree, who complete better at 4-year institutions after that, if you don't want that student who is ripe and ready for your institution to be successful, what is it you want? They're the best we can deliver to you. So you got to switch your policies to do that. And again, I called out Lawrence Tech earlier. My board member just came in the room, so I'll make sure I'll call it out again. They're doing amazing things. They're doing really intricate things. There's thousands of students who are dual enrolling at this private institution that is not easy to get into. It's very technical. And that's a huge win. So I think we got to start putting pressure on the 4 years to do better. Do I still have a job?
Great topics, great questions. No, I like it when the crowd gets fired up, the longer we go here.
Hi, I'm Vanessa Kiesler with Launch Michigan. We are proud to be part of the coalition advocating for these changes. So exciting work, and thanks to the panel. I'm going to do the thing that's a little bit of a statement wrapped around a vague question to take a little airtime. But I'm going to take it up a little level, and I appreciate Russ and everybody talking about the Growing Michigan Together Council. One of the main things the PK20 work group said is Michigan needs to commit to the Michigan Education Guarantee, that every Michigan student graduates with the future-ready skills and competencies they need to be successful in work and life. This has been a big area of focus for Launch Michigan since the GMTC came out with this recommendation, because we agree. And actually, I was talking on the shuttle to somebody. I was talking to somebody at the ferry stop. Everybody, when you say, what do you really think needs to happen for kids? They say, and it's like, Dr. Hopkins, I appreciate you saying what DPSCD has realized. They say, oh, my kids are bored, they don't know what they're doing, and they're not meaningfully connecting to their next steps. And so that's what the Michigan Education Guarantee is really all about, saying every Michigan student, we should build on the rigor from the merit curriculum, Michigan merit curriculum, and change our policies at that structural level so that it's not some kids get some career-connected education, but every child, every Michigan child. So we're working on that. If you want to know more, come see me. I got business cards. But here's my vague question. What do you think the appetite is for Michigan to commit to the guarantee for all Michigan students and pair a K-12 guarantee with our 60 by 30 guarantee that we've done so much work on in the past years?
Whew. I don't know how that's vague. That seems really specific. I don't know if it is a softball. I will say that it's easy to get our legislators to agree to these ideas. It's harder to get them to pay for the ideas, especially legislators that believe they're throwing good money after bad money at K-12. And I'm not advocating for that. I don't believe that that's the case. But we've got to show them how these things work. And that's what I love about the dual enrollment piece. You can't deny it. The data is so good. And that will help our students, and it'll help our districts too. You're looking at, the district that Russ partners with mostly is the #1 district that does dual enrollment in the state. They would save $4 million every year from this policy change. And then there are K-12s that are not doing any dual enrollment because they don't want to, for whatever reason. So we need to bring them into the fold, and we need to empower them to talk to the legislators, because I think that's what'll happen. And I just want to say, to round that out, I think the appetite for this dual enrollment piece is pretty darn high because it is bipartisan, because it's win-win-win, and so we feel good about at least this piece of that, and hopefully we put the puzzle together to get to what Launch Michigan is aiming for.
So just a shout out to Dana Polhutke, the state senator. She was able to get funding for Schoolcraft to provide direct funding for dual enrollment this past year. And so that pilot program was very successful. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I know that our dual enrollment numbers went way up because of that. I think it's, we have a lot of school districts in our area that are, they have a lot of the AP programs and that type of thing. And I think it's much more difficult to convince them to get away from them. And I think this, that funding really helped us with that.
Thank you. That was supposed to be one of my talking points. I missed it. Schoolcraft does have a pilot project that is doing exactly this, and it is amazing. So it is, again, proven to be a good practice.
And it's in direct, I don't want to say competition, but it's proximate to a lot of students. You don't know where Schoolcraft is. It's in Washtenaw County. There's a small university in Ann Arbor with a block letter. That's in that vicinity, and there's a lot of high school students that are facing this. You should do AP. You should only do AP. So this pilot program that's happening at Schoolcraft College, which is right in the situs of it, and was used. What we were trying to test, not we, but Schoolcraft, and Dr. Beverly's here. She runs a state department that supports this. They were trying to say, well, look, if we give these folks that are inundated with AP, if we give them an understanding of what dual enrollment could be, and we take away the disincentive for the local school district to fight it, again, so they don't feel like they're losing their own money, well, heck, how long did it take? 12 months? 12 months. And I think they're up to like 1,800 students or 1,200 students taking dual enrollment in the face of AP, and if we do well by Lawrence's daughters, those people can then start taking those credits to that little university in Ann Arbor. I mean it. That's where this can go, is my point. I mean, I'm making a joke about that. But this pilot, we're not coming to you on this island here just talking to you about something that works in Dearborn. We're actually planting it around. We've got a director of a state department who's supportive of it, who used to run a community college, who knows that. This is actually something you can do on the island this weekend, or this week, to talk about that actually could move the needle. And the price is infinitesimally small in a $60 billion budget. So please know that, we come up on the island and sometimes there's big, broad ideas that are a little bit like pie in the sky. This is not this. This is actually worthy of your list to talk to someone on the island about.
If I was going to add to that point that Russ made, that this is not a pie in the sky, unattainable kind of goal. Michigan, 7% of our high school seniors complete with dual enrollment credits. In Indiana, it's over 40%. So this is not something that's theoretical. It's something that's, with the right policies, can start to happen pretty quickly. Anybody else? Questions? Statements wrapped by vague questions?
So I'm from MAISA, John Severson, and working with ISDs across Michigan. The biggest thing I hear is always the cost. So I think if you could fix that, that would really be the pathway to get people on. Coming from Muskegon area ISD, we had a middle college program, highly successful. We passed the Muskegon area promise. Now we had more kids going to college. It changed the culture. I think Detroit has it right because if you look at the whole state, don't look through the lens of who you are in this room. Look at the people who have these very difficult barriers to get there. People first in their family, kids who are coming from high poverty. You got to get rid of all those barriers and start with the end in mind on the logic model to say if every kid was going to do this, if we said every kid could have one dual enrolled course to graduate, then you back it up and take all those barriers away. So when I hear Detroit talk about, they're looking at all the barriers, and they have navigators, I bet, that are helping these kids, lifting them up. And Dearborn had a model that took all of that junk out. So when we look at this sometimes through the lens of 1980, and that ship has sailed, and the colleges who are pushing back on the 4-year shouldn't, because they don't have the numbers. Look at their enrollment numbers. They need every kid to come to some training. And I would say Tech Center's already got it, by the way. CTE's already got it. We have kids dual enrolled. I had a Tech Center of 900. I had half of them dual enrolled at Ferris and Muskegon Community College because those kids were already career generated. But Ryan, if you could fix the money and bring us along, we could probably help with the models to replicate it and look at the deserts of areas that don't have a community college. That's another problem you have. But it's got to be every kid. Detroit's got it right. Every kid has this opportunity, not some of them.
I would also say when we think about the end goal, so to the larger business community, if the end goal is that we have gainfully employed people who have the skills necessary to do the things that we need for a thriving society, dual enrollment is the evidence that we have students in the city and all of our communities that can do this work. They just need intentional pathways to get there. And so that's what we're doing in DPSCD, is saying all of our students can. Let's just figure out the thing that they want to do, and let's figure out how we can make sure they have economic and social mobility. Getting them on those college campuses, they get to see and interact with folks. While we do cohort our students, we also have them in classes at 4-year institutions right next to 30 and 40-year-old people. And that gives them a confidence when they come back to their class to be able to say, I can do this. And we're talking about the kid with the 2.3 GPA. So we've seen evidence that it works. We just need the larger community to understand that and put support behind it.
What will help us is every ISD signs on to this and supports this.
Our last question right here to wrap up.
Okay. My name is Alyssa Sullivan. I'm actually a Hazel Park City Council member, so I come from this from a different perspective. In Hazel Park, we have the Promise Zone. It has been wonderful for our students. The median income in my community is $22,000. So many of our families are not able to afford college, higher education. What I'm hearing a lot in this room is messaging. Is there the possibility for messaging, not necessarily to the community as a whole, but to the parents of these students? Because I feel there is a lack of communication and their understanding to be able to support these programs, but also to put their children on those pathways, because it is affordable to them and it makes these things more tangible. But also, I hear a lot of messaging, not just from my community, but echoed in this room as well. The difference between AP and the dual enrollment almost feels like a class war. It feels very intentionally elitist versus non. And I think that is a hurdle that we all have to address, but also is something that we could address better through this messaging that maybe encourages parents with these, on all sides, but with these tools to help their children be more successful. Is that something that we can work on as a city council member? Is that something that I could participate in my community to I'm very nervous because I'm trying to compile all of the things I had questions about into one. Is there a way forward in this room with the people in this room and the people on this panel to create that opportunity for education and outreach? I come from a volunteer background, so education outreach is always my go-to.
Well, let me quickly tell you about something that we're doing at MCAN that I'm really excited about. We're working with Glen Oaks Community College and Mid-Michigan College, 2 community colleges that are in rural areas, to do direct admittance for all of the students who live in their district. And so every student in every district in both of those community college districts are going to get a letter, or probably already have by now, that says, hey, your college material, we want you to come here, you're accepted. Not only are you accepted, you're in district and you are eligible for the community college guarantee. So your college material, you are accepted, you have money to go. Suddenly that changes the conversation at home. My dream is that we will continue to do this with other community colleges, but we'll also put language in there about Michigan Reconnect for their parents. not only can you go free student, your parent, if they are interested in going, can also go free to local community college. So that's one way that we're trying to do this. We've tried the billboards and the buses, and it just doesn't work. Telling people to go to college does not get them to college. There's too many barriers. And so you have to change the culture. We're trying it out in these two communities, and hopefully 3 months from now, we'll be able to tell you how that went.
All right, really quick, we have one more. Equal time for a
can I-
four-year institution. Russ, I'm sorry, wait, Russ. did
Yeah,
you
I just
wanna
want to say, Councilwoman, I appreciate your question. Councilwoman, I appreciate your question. I don't have an answer for you about the elitist, not elitist thing. I think you've probably put your finger on an issue that I don't know that anyone in this room can quite solve. But what I can tell you is, if you want to increase the college-going culture of what you described, and I'm making some assumptions, but the basic that you gave me was median income of $22,000. So I have some demographic picture of that. The way you're going to change the college-going culture there is to have students who influence them tell them they have to go to college. A lot of people in this room probably went to college because someone of authority told them they had to go to college. That's me, bad high school student. Mom, you got to go to college. It just pounded me. So if you, we're in third generation in Dearborn of that, with not an entirely much higher median income, where now it is a part of the culture. That in 11th grade, if you're not going to Henry Ford College for free, something's wrong with you. And I would tell you that what Ryan just explained is excellent, because you have to set up some type of influencer in that student's mind about why they have to go to college. And that gets really close to some really difficult things. You're an elected official. We don't like mandates. We don't like colleges for everybody. We actually don't even like college right now. So we're swimming uphill on this, or that's two metaphors, sorry. But my point to you is, you are a local person who is elected, and people have voted for you because they like and trust you, or that you've earned you have a voice, that you should start that continual basic conversation of, you will go to college for free when you're in high school.
Okay, Dr. Soap.
We started really expanding our dual enrollment program at Lawrence Tech 4 years ago. We had about 400 kids at that time participating from 20 school districts. Over the last 40 years, we have quadrupled that number. We have approximately 1,700 dual enrollment students in 58 school districts. I'm an engineer. I like numbers, and the numbers really speak for themselves. There is vested interest. 50% of these students, when they are seniors, come and join Lawrence Tech, which is amazing. Lawrence Tech is a very hard school. I mean, engineering and architecture, and our majors are not that easy, let's put it this way. But here is the better statistic. 80% of the remaining 50% go to college, period. I cannot think of a more humane program in existence. 90% of kids who participate in dual enrollment end up in college. Compare these numbers to non-dual enrollment students in these 58 different school districts, it's magnitude order better. As was mentioned a few minutes ago, just the kids going and seeing kids 3 or 4 years older or 2 years older doing amazing stuff in research labs and the research centers, working with the professors, that's all the incentive they need. They don't need an adult to tell them go to college. They just see it, people a couple of years older doing incredible stuff. So again, I think I'm preaching to the choir, but as mentioned, this is a great opportunity being on the island for the next couple of days. Let's advocate for the heck out of it. I mean, this is a great program. Let's advocate for it and convince whoever needs to be convinced that this is worthwhile. Thank you all very much.
All right, thank you for ending us on that great example. Our panelists brought not just their expertise, but a lot of energy and passion, so please thank them. In the back of the room, we've got some one-pagers on some of the more technical aspects and data around dual enrollment at the table in the back. Also, our State of Education and Talent report. But the conversation does not need to end right now. We are going to flow right into our talented reception right here in this room. So please feel free to continue the conversation with your neighbors and any of our panelists who can stick around.
Where did your daughter graduate?
Tuskegee University.